for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a leader, entrepreneur, an author, CEO, and expert, no other than Mr. Paul H. Flowers Jr.
Daniel, thank you so much for having me on the show. And hello to all of our listeners out there in podcast land.
Indeed. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Paul. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'll go down memory lane just a little bit. Uh, like Daniel said, my name is Paul, like the saint. H is for Howard. I love using my middle name. It brings connectedness and closeness. Of course, I pay homage to my father with flowers, and I'm a junior because he was senior. With that, I grew up in the lovely little city of Chicago. Beautiful place, and I'd also moved away just recently, but it doesn't take away from the things that I'd learned while being inside the city. So I know a part of our conversation today is about building business and legacy from scratch, and a lot of my story does, in fact, begin in the Chicagoland area where I'd gone to private Catholic school for 13 years, went away to university downstate at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, spent a nice amount of time there. And again, it was voluntarily, as I was actually having this conversation with some colleagues earlier. Finished up there, did a program at Georgetown, and came on back to Chicago. I actually stumbled into a family and a fiance, moved into corporate training, management, and sales. And the rest, as they say, is the proverbial history. But that really did bring me into the space of insurance and healthcare specifically, where again, I'll develop more of the story as we have the conversation, but learning some of the things that went on in a corporate setting that didn't necessarily tie in with my spirit, my being, the integrity, just who I want to be as a person, not just as a business, right, but as a person and as a brand. What I learned is that if that doesn't resonate with me, if the companies that I'm aligning myself with don't resonate with me, then I needed to part ways. So that gave birth to my company, Superior Insurance Advisors, as well as a nonprofit, which is Life, Health, and Legal Education Partners. And we are, at this point, all 50 states we can actually service with insurance consulting and education for employers and employees, again, throughout the nation.
Mr. Paul H. Flowers Jr., thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge to
Thank
the world. What was the defining moment or spark that convinced you to build something from nothing?
you. Whew, that's a really good question. So when we talk about defining moments, I can bring up a couple of them. I'll go back about 11 years. I worked in direct to consumer health insurance. And when I first started that position, Daniel, when I tell you it was almost sickening to hear my leadership tell me not to fly too high because then people would start to look at me and notice what I'm doing, and not to soar too low, not to flow too low because I'd get in trouble for, not hitting my numbers, but to just kind of coast in the middle. Not only did I hear that once, I heard it twice on two different campaigns, almost a year apart from two different managers. Now, prior to that, I'd been in legal insurance. So, with that being a direct sales company, I had gotten into personal development. So, I'd reestablished my love for learning and reading and growing and developing myself outside of having somebody tell me to for a grade. But instead, life became the teacher, and I wanted to really learn it and soak it up. So I'd gotten into this business, I'd gotten into this company, and at a point, again, I'm selling health insurance over the phone. A young lady was in her early 50s, and she had no clue what her health insurance did and really how to purchase it independent of her job. You see, she had left her job, she had lost her job, let me be specific. And when you lose your job in the States, you get the option of Cobra. Cobra is ungodly expensive, as most listeners that have heard of it could agree. From there, she had nowhere to turn. So she reached out to the company I was working with And because I came from an educational background also, I spent the time, Daniel, to actually educate her from a fiduciary standpoint. And fiduciary means simply that I take on a financial responsibility for her as opposed to just looking out for the company. Where I previously had my securities registration, my Series 6 and 63, that caused me to think a little differently about how health insurance impacts a person. So I took the time to educate her on the policy. I took the time to educate her on the differences, the doctors, the what they call a formulary, basically the list of drugs, and these various things that she never knew. And at the end of it, she understood the financial bottom line between one plan versus another versus another, and then any ancillary products that might be there alongside it, or what's called supplemental benefits. Now, it might sound like a lot, but in practice, I explain things such that a 5-year-old can understand it. So all of this time, this woman had not been properly educated on how to purchase health insurance as a 50-plus-year-old woman. Though she'd had it given to her through her job, there really wasn't the education there from the broker, from the employer, on how to purchase it and truly how to use it to maximize its benefit and reduce the overall cost to her and the company. I did that, and Daniel, she cried at the end of that phone call. Now, initially, I thought that I was going to get in trouble, right? Because this lady's crying on the call, right? What are you doing? Got somebody crying on the, we say we have QA, they listen to the calls. And, that went through my head. But when I realized she was crying, and what she said to me was that no one's ever taken the time to actually explain that to me before. And I've had coverage through my employer for decades. That was that light bulb that somebody needs to teach people about health insurance, right? We go to school for all these various things and learn all the social studies and geography and topography. And then we go to high school and then we learn calculus and additional geometry and polynomial math and all these things that we can actually use to be viable citizens in the country. Question mark, full of sarcasm. So when you think about things that can be taught, that we will actively actually use virtually every day for the rest of our adult lives, why don't we learn about health insurance? So I took that on then as a way, Daniel, that I would actually sell what I would consider do business, because I knew I'd be on my own at some point. But I took that as a way that I would sell, would be more from a consultative point, and actually doing this for the benefit of the customer, not for the benefit of the company. So I'll pause there, because that truly was about that defining moment for me that said, hey, we need to do this differently.
Definitely. Do it differently, people. Beyond profit, what core purpose or values did you want your business to embody from day one?
Whew, these are excellent questions. Transparency. And what I mean by transparency, Daniel, is really simple. There are laws now that say that in the employee benefit space, meaning the health insurance that's sold to groups and employers across the country, there are laws now that say you have to disclose your compensation. And companies don't always do it entirely. They're motivated by additional bonuses, like back end bonuses that they receive from keeping more bodies on the plan. I used to work with one of these companies in the employee benefit space. And again, it was sickening. The leadership, the way that they would laugh and joke about premium increases for people, right? It just looks like names of companies on a spreadsheet with percentages of increases that were next to their numbers, next to their names. And they literally would joke about, oh, well, this person had a good year, they can take a few more points. Or this company said if they go up any more, they're going to leave this company and they'll find another carrier to work with. All this company, they're really cool. We should give them a decrease if possible. And things like that, where it wasn't actually about the people. And for it to not be about the people, for that transparency to not be present, excuse me, I knew early on because this was in the early days working with this employee benefits company, and they're a large multinational company, with all this recognition. But behind the scenes, oh, it got dirty. It absolutely got dirty. So the transparency that's not there and that hasn't been there, that I hear they're now currently attempting to teach people about these other ways of getting insurance, it's a farce. Major companies, major brokerages around the country would play the game of shopping between Blue Cross, United, and Cigna and Aetna, and not really truly being transparent about all of the options that an employer has available. I'd even had colleagues that would tell companies with five, six, 700 people, 1,000 people, that they were too small to do something like self-funding, the book that I'd written. And the the reality of it is, again, that for this specific example, a company can be 5 people, 25 people, usually 50 to 100 is a pretty good spot to start with exploring this other type of healthcare coverage. But working with a big company, they were more in bed with the carriers than the customer. And again, from a legal, moral, and ethical standpoint, was it legal? Absolutely. Of course it is. Was it moral? Was it ethical? I can't say. And for those reasons, again, with it not aligning with me, not with them not being transparent with the customer, and basically hiding that information, I don't do business like that. I don't operate like that. So ultimately, I ended up parting ways with them as well. And that's where I said, you know what? I'm going to do this on my own. These people are definitely no smarter than me. They don't know more about the industry. Nothing that they have or have done is so much more above and beyond what it is that I can accomplish it when I put my mind to a thing. From that standpoint, I said, you know what? When I do this, as I do this, I'm going to be as transparent and open as possible. We look at the compensation structures, for instance. There's fee-based consulting versus percentage of savings versus being compensated from carriers. And typically, people in my sphere will operate on a fee-based consulting model so that the customer knows that, hey, it doesn't matter what X, Y, and Z company may pay. Our goal and our compensation is a flat fee from you. So we actually actively work on your behalf. And that's only possible when when you have transparency, again, as a value for how you operate. It helps you to select the type of networks you work with. It helps you to select the type of pharmacies that you recommend, again, in this health insurance example. And ultimately, when you're transparent as a person first, right, letting an employer know your story, letting them know why you would recommend one thing versus another, letting them know how you got into that particular business, it makes a difference. Right? We don't just have to put on the suit and tie and shine our shoes and act like we're this, corporate cog. We can actually be people. And I think that's lost in this industry, and quite frankly, in sales as a whole. A lot of that is lost. So I'd say transparency.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. Very well said and beautifully articulated. But before we continue our discussion for today, I just want to shout out my ranking tops for the last 30 days because in Mali, I got number 9 on the Apple chart. United Arab Emirates 11, El Salvador 13, Uruguay, Norway, Canada, Slovenia, Macedonia, South Africa, Mauritius, and many more. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
beautiful.
supporting this podcast. Yes. Thank you so much, people. And I hope you will continue listening to this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors, podcast hosts all over the world. Mr. Paul, what will be your short term and long term goals as an author, as an entrepreneur, CEO, and of course, a leader?
So short and long term goals. Well, I'll tell you, an immediate short term goal is to be in as many countries as you. With the expansive nature of your podcast, I just want to give a shout out to you and kudos once
Thank
again,
you.
because having reached so many countries, Daniel, what you're doing is impacting lives and impacting generations that you may not even be aware of. So I just want to tip my hat to you. And as a host that has such a broad reach, and for all the listeners in every country, I hope that this gets translated and the sound of my voice and the captions can be translated into every language to which your podcast will reach. Because I will have more messaging than just healthcare. You know, healthcare is a part of who I am, but it's not all of who I am. You ask about short and long term goals. Aside from finishing up this particular series, there is a fourth book that I'll be releasing towards July that's on the 12 skills. And the 12 skills are a specific set of skills. And those skills are things that can be used worldwide. Whereas the things that I talk about in healthcare are primarily for United States folks and people that are using health insurance in and about the States. But the short term, again, by July, this will actually be, I'll be finishing pinning it out. The 12 skills, 12 core skills that a person can utilize throughout their lifetime, I think will be a monumental work that will actively put hope and inspiration back into everyday people, but also provide a roadmap so that they can not just pick up a book and read about these 12 skills and say, okay, well, maybe I'll work on this someday. You and I know someday never happens,
Yes.
right? Someday does not exist. Got a calendar
Someday.
here, here, and here, and I don't see a someday on that calendar, Daniel. With that, I want to provide an actual roadmap for success, a roadmap to creating lasting change internally. Because what I learned, Daniel, is the more we focus on internal change, internal structural changes, right? When you put positivity inside of yourself on a continual basis, okay, I'm not anybody's biochemist, right? Disclaimer. But I believe that it changes the DNA and the actual fiber of who you are, right? Who you be in any given instance. And for me, that's real. And I spent a lot of time putting positive things inside, and that's just it just so happens to be that that's what comes out, 99.5% of the time. So in the short term, finishing up the two books in the Cost Slayers Gold Mine series, as well as the book on the 12 skills. Past that, my goal is to actually put 10 billion, and that's billion with a B, to help put $10 billion back into the U.S. economy by doing the work that I do as far as restructuring health plans for smaller companies, 50 to 100, to larger 2, 3, 5, 10,000 person companies all across the country. That will be a part of my legacy. That's something that I can actually assist others in helping to build and brand themselves and their legacies with, right? So it's not just a me thing, it's a team thing. From simple things, I'm pointing, you can't see my son because this room is that way. I'm doing this from home. Things like involving my son in helping to record some of my social media content and to help with editing and distribution, showing him what it takes to actually build something from scratch that can outlast me. So the point in making these books, on the healthcare system, because that may change, right? 20, 30, 50 years from now, but also the
Yes.
one that's on the 12 skills, and then a book that I'd actually started a while ago on leadership. These things can outlast me. Much like the books on the shelf behind me, a couple that are directly above my head are Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. These are titles that I'm certain, again, on a show like this, you've investigated or heard people discuss time and time again. Well, clearly those authors have passed a long time ago, right? Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill have rolled around in their graves a few hundred times, right, at this point, but that legacy outlives them. Their good works and contributions to society outlive them. And by continuing to produce works both in the field and on the paper is where I think that my short and long term goals and focus is actually best utilized so that I can leave that lasting impact from saving money and putting money back into the hands of employers and employees. And then also at the same time, while building this, showing my son and my daughters how to build something from scratch, but also leaving something behind so that If God forbid, I get called from this planet tomorrow, or ideally not tomorrow, let's say like a year from now, I've left four, five, six books behind. I've left my writing. I've left my, blood, sweat, and tears, my intellect, at least a portion of it, behind on paper. And again, to me, that piece, that lasting portion that can outlast me, I think that's important for everybody to consider. At least putting some type of book out there so that something can outlast them. God forbid something were to happen to them unexpectedly.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Paul, and looking forward for more success and to your legacy as well. And what
Thank
will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a leader, entrepreneur, author,
you.
as well as CEO and expert?
Daniel, there is no time to waste. There's no time to waste. The For again, everyone that's listening to me right now, whatever it is you want to do, start doing it today. Right? Pause this because I'll talk for a minute or two. Pause this, pick up a pen and paper, put that idea down, and write down two or three steps that you can do today in order to start that journey. Whatever it is that you want to do, most of the time there's someone out there that's done that thing or done something similar that can help guide, teach, direct, lead, etc. Figure out who those people are. With the advent of AI and chat GPTs and all the Claudes and those things, you can virtually talk to it, tell it who you are, what you want to do, how you want to be, and ask, right? Ask for an outline of people you should talk to, places you should begin to network and assert yourself, and books, most importantly, that you should read and begin to put into your psyche so that you can, again, begin to change the very fiber of your DNA also. Because you got to remember, there's a computer term, GIGO, GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Now, I'd like to rephrase that just slightly and turn it into, instead of garbage, greatness. So GIGO, greatness in, greatness out. Daniel, again, and all the listeners out there, if you want something great to come out of you, you have to begin putting great things into you. And if that means cutting off the television or deleting the social media apps from your phone or leaving, again, relationships with friends, family members, hell, spouses that are not for the greatness in you, right? Then it takes that. And just not to get on all the numerical pieces, but I'll just put it out there really quickly. I think there's somewhere to the tune of 8 billion people on this planet. And we at times get caught up in the opinion of one or two, right? One or two out of 8 billion with a B. That one or two is a drop in an ocean of possibility. And that one or two and their opinions do not have the ability to change your ocean of greatness, your ocean of value, your ocean of opportunity cannot be soured by one or two. They will fall down to the bottom, much like the other specks that fall to the bottom of the ocean. And the ocean will continue to be if you see it that way. So, my bit of advice, do it now. See yourself as that ocean of opportunity and go out and find that leader, mentor, guide, right? And take some action in connecting with them so that you can have a roadmap, a blueprint, so to speak, on your next great endeavor or building that person that you ultimately want to become.
Yes, people, stop procrastinating. Do it now because life is too short.
Hmm.
And Mr. Paul, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, book 101 review for sure is fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and Food 101 in fifth season as well, Geography 101 in fourth season, and of course, my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. My love letters is in third season, and Movie 101 review and Music 101 in each fourth season, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. So please do listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Paul, what do you wish you've known about building to last when you wrote your first business plan?
Mm. Building to last. When I work, when I wrote my very first business plan, it was actually in. I went and got my master's of entrepreneurship from Oklahoma State University. Go Cowboys! And that was when I actually wrote my first business plan. They instructed us in a pretty good way, right? It was a class called the First 100 Days, and I love the class. Still reference the materials every so often. One of the things that I wished I'd known in the beginning was how to uh, properly view your exit strategy. And I know that that seems kind of odd when we're talking about building a business, right? Building typically is when you're starting. But looking at an exit strategy, you have to know where you want to end in order to me, properly begin. So if there's a specific dollar amount that you want to achieve, okay, what is that going to take? How many sales? How many people? How many contacts? How many leads? And then you build the system from that. Otherwise, you can go the other way and build this traditional system and think and hope and pray for certain results, but not knowing where you want to land. You may not necessarily know the best tools to implement to get you to that landing. For instance, if I'm using a CRM that has a cap of, let's just say, 1,000 contacts, or a particular email distributor, or a plan service provider, a software that I'm using to distribute emails that has a cap of 1,000 people, but I want to build an $8 billion business. Well, I might need to reach out to more than 1,000 people on a regular basis, right? Unless I've got the best closing system in the world for the highest ticketed item, which that's not most people and most folks' endeavors when they say that they want to start a business. So, in a practical sense, beginning with the end in mind, we've heard it before, is helpful in so much that it helps you to better outline the proper structures that you need in order to build to that particular end, as opposed to beginning with things that you think will work, that you ultimately have to make two and three and four and five adjustments to. Well, let me just start with the things that I know that I'll need to get to the place that I'm going. And then, along with that, how to properly capitalize and fund that venture early on. Those would be the things that I wish I'd known when I'd written that first business plan.
Mr. Paul H. Flowers Jr., thank you so much again for sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, your books as well, or your upcoming books to come?
Absolutely. Well, for any of the listeners out there that do just want to take a look and listen into how health insurance is done, please go ahead and download the Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine. It is actually free for the next 24 hours. That book is free on Amazon.com. That's the Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine. Aside from that, family, just connect with me on any social media platform, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn specifically is one of my favorites to use. Paul H. Flowers Jr. is my handle. It's everywhere. You Google Paul H. Flowers Jr. and you'll find me. So connect, let's stay in touch, and let's grow and make a difference together. Thank you.
Yes, people, I support Mr. Paul H. Flowers Jr. because if you support him, more and more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Daniel. Thank you. And thank your listeners as well.
Bodycom people, see you soon.